Welcome, UCL fans, to the Week 13 review and ranking for the United Championship League. I am Nintendo Fanatic 64. I have watched all the matches, crunched numbers, and come up with what I believe is a fair and accurate ranking system for the UCL. Now, before I begin, a couple things. One, I always mention I am not affiliated with the UCL or any of its coaches. If any of the coaches do end up watching this and do approve of it, please give the video a thumbs up, or at least let me know what you think if you disagree. And for everyone else who's watching, if you also agree with it, please leave it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments section below who you're going to be rooting for as we are entering into the playoffs in only 2 weeks. So with all that, we're going to go ahead and get into the review of everything first. Now, before I get into all the reviews, the Durham Druddigons have forfeited the rest of the season due to personal reasons. So all the remaining opponents will receive wins. Now, I will give them the wins in the weeks that they would have battled them. So this week they won. The Bronze Bearticks get the win due to the forfeit of the Durham Druddigons. Alright, so after that we'll go ahead and start with the actual matches that did take place. There's only going to be 7 now due to Durham's leaving of the season. Starting off, we have the Long Island Reggie Rockies, whose record is 6-6, taking on the Philadelphia Fur Alligators, whose record is also 6-6. And it was a 3-0 victory for the Long Island Reggie Rockies. MVP of the match goes to Mammo Swine from the Long Island Reggie Rockies, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Manchester Magnazones, who are winless this season. Record is 0-12, taking on the South Beach Slow Kings, whose current record is 2-10. And it was a 2-0 victory for the South Beach Slow Kings. MVP of the match goes to Tyranitar from the South Beach Slow Kings, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Pittsburgh Pichus, whose current record is 6-6, taking on the Tulsa Talon Flames, whose record is 5-7. And it was a 3-0 victory for the Pittsburgh Pichus. MVP of the match goes to Keldeo from the Pittsburgh Pichus, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. And then the next 4 matches are all big matches for the playoff contenders. Starting off, we have the New York Yankees, whose record is 9-3, taking on the Toronto Tokikis, whose record is 4-8. And it was a 4-0 victory for the New York Yankees. MVP of the match goes to Mega Pincer from New York, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Tucson Terrakions, whose record is 9-3, taking on the Bristol City Blazekins, whose record was 6-6. And it was a 4-0 victory for the Tucson Terrakions. MVP of the match goes to the Rodham Heat from the Tucson Terrakions, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the St. Louis Rampardos, currently 11-1, taking on the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose record is 2-10. And it was a 3-0 victory for the St. Louis Rampardos. MVP of the match goes to Raikou from the St. Louis Rampardos, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. And in the final match, we have the Newcastle Nidokings, whose record is 10-2, taking on the Carolina Keldeos, whose record is 5-7. And it was a narrow 1-0 victory for the Carolina Keldeos, and also in this defeat of the Newcastle Nidokings has ended their 10-game winning streak. MVP of the match goes to Honchkrow from the Carolina Keldeos, who managed to get 3 knockouts at the end of the match to win the game. So that will do it for the actual review. Now we're going to go into the rankings. I'm still going to list off the Durham Druddigons as if they were still competing in it, because of course they still have a record for all the wins and losses they had before eventually dropping out. I hope to see them back next season. It's sad that it came to this, but personal reasons, they will remain personal for him, and we hope to see him back for next season. So, starting off at number 16, we have the Manchester Magnazones, whose record is now 0-13. At number 15, we have the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose record is now 2-11. At number 14, we have the South Beach Slow Kings, whose record has improved to 3-10. At number 13, we have the Toronto Tokikis, whose record is now 4-9. At number 12, we have the Tulsa Talon Flames, whose record is now 5-8. The next 4 spots have the same records, but I go by a differential to come up with the rankings for it. So we have the Carolina Keldeos at number 11 with a 6-7 record and a differential score of -14. At number 10, we have the Bristol City Blazekins, whose differential score got them -11. At number 9, we have the Philadelphia Feraligators, again a 6-7 record with a differential score of -6. And then at number 8 is the Durham Druddigons, whose record again will be 6-7 for this week, with a differential score of 4. At number 7, we have the Long Island Reggie Rockies, with a record of 7-6 and a differential score of -1. And then at number 6, we had the Pittsburgh Peaches, whose record was also 7-6 and had a score of 11 so far this season. Now, the next 4 teams all have the same record. Now, I don't know how they will determine the playoffs in case these records don't change, because none of these teams will face each other again in the next 2 weeks. I'm going by the current differential scores on it for my rankings on it. So at number 5, with a record of 10-3, we have the Bronx Beartics, whose differential score is 18. At number 4, we have the Tucson Terrakions, also 10-3, and their differential score is also 18. And the only reason I ranked the Tucson Terrakions higher than the Bronx Beartics this week is due to the Tucson Terrakions defeating the Bronx Beartics earlier this season, and the fact that Tucson actually even competed this week, whereas the Bronx Beartics got their win awarded to them due to the forfeit. At number 3, we have the New York Yankees, 10-3 with them, differential score of 21. At number 2, we have the Newcastle Nido-Kings, again 10-3, and a differential score of 23. And then finally, in first place, we have the St. Louis Rampardos, whose current record is 12-1. If they did end up losing in the next 2 weeks, I believe they will still make it in no matter what if they go by a differential, because the current score for the St. Louis Rampardos is currently 36 points. So that is the rankings as I have seen here. If you disagree with it, let me know in the comments how you would currently rank the teams on them. Let me know who you want to see make it into the playoffs based upon the last 5 teams between the 4 teams of the Bronx Beartics, Tucson Terrakions, New York Yankees, and the Newcastle Nido-Kings. Which of those 3 teams you feel deserve to make it into the playoffs this season? As I stated, St. Louis Rampardos with a 12-1 record and a differential score of 36 are basically guaranteed to make it into the playoffs. Even if they get 6-0'd in the next 2 weeks, there's no way that they cannot make it into the playoffs. So, but that's going to go ahead and do it for this week. I don't know if I'm going to do another playoff predictions video for this week like I did in the last 2 weeks. Of course, last week was only because I missed sound on the first week. But let me know what you think. And then also, I know coming up shortly is going to be the GBA starting up again. I know they already have their own kind of channel talking about things, but if you would like me to cover that as well, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see if I can try to find time to work that in as well. But with all that said, I will hope to see you all back here next week for another review and rankings video. Take care and good night.